The princess said that she was straightforward. A few days before the wedding, I was taken away by a thief. Later I came back unharmed. In order to avoid the birth of the festival, my family suppressed the matter. The next day, the princess held a banquet but mentioned it in public. I heard that Sister Yang was taken away and injured by a thief. Is she better now? In less 2 days, rumors spread that the prospective crown princess lost herself before marriage. The marriage was put on hold, and I drowned to prove my innocence. After death, I heard the princess cry aggrievedly. I just kindly asked her body. I didn't know that she couldn't think so. Open your eyes again, and go back to the day when the prince held a banquet. This time I brought a person, a real princess who was exiled to the people. 1. After my death, my soul flew to the palace. The princess was lying in the arms of the prince and crying. Brother, you know, I have always been straightforward and say something. It's not like these noble women who are full of stomachs. I also heard that she was kidnapped, so I kindly asked her, who knew that she was so serious that she was so determined to die that I was accused. That's all right. They all said openly and secretly that I forced Yang Wanqing to death, and that I, a princess, bullied people. Woo-woo. The prince seemed to be very distressed and stroked her back. Ayu, don't cry. The daughter of the Yang family is really hateful. Even if she dies, and let my sister suffer for her. After losing her mother, she still thought she was good, and had to marry her alone to be the crown princess. The princess cried louder. My mother appointed the daughter of the Yang family for you early, saying that with the Yang family's assistant brother, she would be able to become the crown prince smoothly. Yao. The queen mother didn't even think about what it had to do with the Yang family, if my brother could become the crown prince. Obviously my brother himself has the ability. The prince's face was a little stiff, and he quickly smiled and comforted her. Good sister, now that everyone is dead, don't think so much. I'll take you out of the palace to relax in a few days. Really? That's great, brother. The princess finally raised her red eyes, and burst into tears and laughed. I was so angry that my soul was shaking. Looking at the extraordinary brother-sister relationship, I couldn't wait to strangle them. But when I stretched out my hand, it was in vain. 2. I have had a marriage contract with the prince since I was a child, which was decided by the empress in front of the saint. Therefore, I also follow the rules and act cautiously. But there was still a gap before marriage, and I was kidnapped by a thief. Although he came back unharmed, his reputation was damaged, so his parents had to hide it. The princess suddenly asked about me that I didn't expect. This matter was hidden like an iron barrel, and even the prince didn't know about it. How did the princess know? Later, I thought of a possibility that this group of thieves were related to the princess. But I don't understand. Why does she want to deal with me? Seeing the two people hugging each other, I understand. It turns out that she has always been targeting me. If you don't succeed, you will lose your reputation if you don't kill me, until you can't marry her prince brother. But on what basis? Why do I have to use my life to fill their love game? 3. On the day of rebirth, Qiu Shui just sent an invitation from the princess. Princess Chaoyang likes to be lively, and invites noble women every time she holds a banquet. Therefore, I didn't take it to heart when the post was sent in my previous life. I am the future crown princess, and I always want to give the princess face. Even if I'm about to get married, I don't want to touch her. After receiving the invitation again, I stroked the handwriting on it and smiled at Qiu Shui. Go to Siping Hutong and help me find a girl named Qianghua. Liang Yu is not a real princess, which I didn't know until after my death. In those years, the princess was lost outside the palace. The princess they found was not the real royal bloodline. Qianghua, who was exiled to the people, was the real princess. I want to give her a big gift for this banquet. Not long after, the maid came to report that the third lady was coming. The third sister is an illegitimate child, and the most timid of the sisters. I have always felt a little pity for her. Just like in her previous life, she came to me carefully. Sister, can you take me to the princess's banquet this time? In my previous life, I took her there, so I gave her the opportunity to publicize my infidelity after the princess said that I was taken away. At that time, she shouted in panic. It's not like that. My sister didn't lose her body, and she didn't commit herself to the robbers. My sister's clothes were just a little broken. I can still be the crown princess. The more she shouted, the more anxious she was, as if she was about to cry. Her panicked appearance was even more afraid of me as a party. But in the eyes of others, her behavior is just to cover up, which makes outsiders believe this matter. If it's really nothing, why can their lady panic like this? They offered to test me. The prince's eyes were dark. Wanqing, if you are really perfect, I will definitely marry you. But you have been taken away, and have a bad reputation. I'm afraid of being a side concubine. The queen sitting on the stage didn't say a word, and the noble ladies looked at me with a smile or pity. I was pushed into a dilemma. It was a kind of humiliation for the official lady to be checked in public. What kind of face do I have? And what kind of face do I have to be a crown princess? I couldn't figure it out yet. The third sister cried and pulled me to leave. If you don't check, why do you want to check my sister? The daughter of our young family is not humiliated by you. I've all said that my sister is good. Why do you have to force us? After returning to the young family, I realized that I was wrong. At this time, the rumor that the young family's daughter lost her virginity before marriage had slowly spread. In less than 2 days, it began to spread all over the world. The marriage was put on hold, and even the saint asked about it in person. My father ordered someone to arrest me after he went to court. He was extremely saddened. Chinger, it's not that your father doesn't protect you. Now everyone in the world knows that the daughter of our young family has been taken away by thieves, and has lost her chastity. Just think of it as your sister's for you. Only in this way can we prove you're innocent, and the spirit of our daughter of the young family. I was thrown into the pond and drowned alive. Soon, the news that Yang's daughter threw herself into the river to prove her innocence spread all over the world. After I died, some people began to regret, and they all proved themselves with death. I'm afraid it's really nothing. It's a pity for a human life. Even the princess who first mentioned this matter was also because of my death, that I in order to make up for the pain of the young family's loss of their daughter. The saint ordered the third sister to marry the crown prince as a concubine. When the soul dissipated, my good sister was dressed in peach red, and married into the East Palace. Sister, the princess is having a banquet. Can you take me there? Seeing that I didn't say anything, she looked at my face carefully and asked again. I come back to my senses and smiled as usual, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. Of course. It's just that this time, I'm afraid it won't be as you wish. 4. The flower appreciation banquet came as scheduled. The princess was overjoyed to see me and held my hand intimately. Sister Yang, here you are. Everyone said that Princess Chaoyang was the most popular. Every time I meet someone, I don't show off. And when I meet someone who is in love, it's a sister. In addition, the princess is delicate and innocent, and almost all the noble women are willing to get along with her. Everyone greeted for a long time until the queen and the figure of the prince flashed. The princess, who had been laughing all the time, didn't seem to see them. Suddenly, she looked at me nervously and worriedly. I heard that Sister Yang was taken away by a thief and injured. Is she better now? I sneered in my heart, but my face was extremely surprised. Where did the princess hear the news? It was obviously the third sister who was taken away by the thief. Looking back, I saw the pale face of the third sister, and Princess Choyang's eyes were full of incredible. It's not like that. The third sister shook her head helplessly, and noticed that the lady's eyes began to look strangely at her. She was so flustered that she suddenly grabbed my arm. Sister, isn't it me? Why did you falsely accuse me? It's obviously you who was taken away by the thief. She shook my sleeves desperately and cried. Sister, I'm just a humble daughter. If I lose my reputation, I will die. You can't push it on me. I narrowed my eyes slightly and quickly shook off her hand, with an angry voice. Arrogant. I saw that you were in a bad mood after returning home, and took you out to distract yourself. How dare you blame this disaster on your eldest sister? Is it because I'm usually too good to you? Seeing her stunned, I continued to sneer. If you don't want to make trouble anymore, why don't you just call the people in the house and ask who was kidnapped? I am sure that between the quasi-crown princess and an ordinary concubine, they will choose me without hesitation. She also knew about who the home mansion would choose. She slowly softened her body and began to become desperate. The moment she fell, her eyes suddenly lit up, as if she remembered something and quickly ran to the princess, looking forward to. Princess, you should know. You can prove that it was not me who was my sister who was abducted, right? The princess can testify for me, right? She stared straight at the person in front of her, like the last straw. Looking closely, there is a little deep meaning in his eyes. Princess Chaoyang obviously also noticed that she thought for a moment, turned her head and covered her mouth at me and smiled innocently. Sister Yang's status is precious, and the house is naturally for me. I raised the corners of my lips. What the princess means is it either her or me? Without waiting for her to answer, I also blinked my eyes and joked. I know that the princess is good and can't see others cry, but it's not easy to fake such things. The family wanted to hide this disaster for the third sister, but she didn't expect the princess to be so well informed that she asked in public and recognized the wrong person. I don't know which one had ulterior motives to deceive the princess. Her face turned blue and white, and she said with hatred for a long time. This young San is really hateful. He took advantage of my sympathy to almost misunderstand Sister Yang. The third sister finally collapsed to the ground without a sound that I curled my lips, and was about to make a sound, but was interrupted by a sudden male voice. I heard that Miss Yang is famous, and now I really live up to her reputation at first sight. He turned around and looked at the prince's gloomy face. The queen beside him also looked unhappy. I know in my heart that my fierce behavior even hurt the princess's face, which made them uncomfortable. But so what? Even if I am more virtuous and virtuous, I won't be in their eyes. It's better to be at ease. 5. Seeing them coming forward, Princess Chaoyang breathed a sigh of relief and rushed to the prince like a cheerful little bird. She raised her chin and smiled innocently. The emperor is here. I know that Sister Yang is so powerful that she almost scared you just now. As he said, he pouted his lips and his face was full of depression. You also heard that Sister Yang was injured by a robber, so she asked. Who knows that the wrong person made Sister Yang unhappy? It's all Yu's fault. My brother won't blame me, will he? The prince stroked her long hair with a spoiled face. Silly girl. You are a princess. Who can blame you for making trouble? As he said, he glanced at me warningly and tilted his head towards the princess. I know that he wants me to apologize to Princess Chaoyang. In the previous life, it was the same. Every time Liang Yu looked pitiful, that she was afraid of being blamed by me. And every time, the prince asked me to apologize and comfort her. I didn't know why. I asked him what he apologized, and he looked at me with disappointed eyes. You are the future crown princess. You should be generous, which makes you afraid. It's your fault. I was forced to bow my head and apologize again and again. After a long time, the prince felt that I, my fiancé, was incompetent and always did something wrong. Thinking of this, I ignored his hint. Instead, I hooked my lips and smiled meaningfully. Your Highness is right. The princess is the daughter of the heavenly family. You can be casual, but if your identity is not correct, it is difficult to say. The prince frowned slightly. What nonsense are you talking about? I walked to the queen, who had been silently and lovingly looking at the brother and sister, and was blessed. I heard that in order to find a daughter, the queen went to Jiaping village under the peach forest, hugging and crying with the princess. The love between the queen and the princess was deeply moved by the world. But I fixed her eyes and said word by word. I don't know if the queen recognized the girl in the peach forest that day. Is there any mermaid eyes mixed with pearls? As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. The queen's hand twisting the Buddha beads stiffened, and her eyes were full of disbelief. What does this mean? I stepped forward. Nyang, it's not that the minister and the lady are disrespectful, but the minister saved a woman a few days ago. This woman gave her a jade pendant, which was exactly the same as the piece of the princess's marriage. The minister looked at her appearance and asked her if she had a birthmark. Only then, the minister and the daughter did not dare to go to see the empress. I turned sideways and Qianghua, who had been blocked by me, appeared in front of everyone. I heard the gasping sound of the crowd. Don't blame them, because I was shocked when I first saw her. This Qianghua is almost the same as the eldest princess of Dekheng, who passed away 2 years ago. And the eldest princess of Dekheng is the sister of the saint. My nephew is like an aunt, but he is like that. Princess Chaoyang is just a little like a queen in appearance, and there is no other similarity. Even the emperor once joked that Chaoyang was weak and not like me, and the queen spoke for her. Yu was exiled in her early years, and it was normal to be timid. Dang dang. The teapot behind Liang Yu was knocked to the ground. She was about to fall and grabbed the prince's shoulder weakly. Her fingertips were almost deformed, and a pair of beautiful eyes were about to cry. Sister Yang, I know I just offended you, but you can't hurt me like this. Her voice was full of tears, and she was heartbroken when she heard it. I'm the mother's flesh and blood. How can you be so separated from us? He looked at the queen, and wanted to seek her approval. Unfortunately, the queen was still staring straight at Qianghua, as if she didn't hear what she was saying. For a long time, she withdrew her eyes and glanced at me expressionlessly. I will find out this matter clearly. It is about the royal bloodline, and must not be confused. After saying that, when he saw Princess Chaoyang, who was crying on the prince, his eyebrows jumped fiercely and he said sternly, Hug and hug. Give me back to the palace. 6. Before leaving the park, I was blocked by the prince. He looked like he was asking for his guilt, and his voice was deep. Why do you want to embarrass you? I couldn't figure it out. Best? Your Highness, don't you want to be your own sister? He was stunned, and then shook his head irritably. Of course it's you. Do you think any cat or dog can be a princess? I don't say anything. My heart is biased. It's useless to leave the evidence in front of you. He seemed to have a sense and hummed heavily. Even if it's not, Yu has been a princess for so many years, and she is always an orphan sister. And you, the future sister-in-law, not only help her protect her, but also bullied her with outsiders. Do you love me so much? I pursed my lips and my voice was cold. Your Highness, Have you ever thought that if the princess mentions this matter today, if it is rumored that I am the one who lost her, what price will I pay for her words? He frowned and said, Wanqing, how can you be like this? I remember that you are not such a person. A was naive and straightforward. She also said it casually. She didn't mean to harm you. Besides, didn't this matter be solved? He looked at me up and down, looking impatient. Besides, I don't care whether it's you who was taken away or not. What else do you want? I looked in a trance, as if he had returned to his previous life. He stood in front of my grave and sighed. You have died 100 years ago. You are so happy. I feel sorry for my aunt and sad all day long. What you lost was only a life, but what she lost was a smile. All kinds of performances prove that he has a good relationship with Liang Yu, and this person doesn't seem to know himself. He didn't hear my answer, and he became more and more angry. Young Wanqing, how can Gu believe that you can be the crown princess of Gu? I closed my eyes and was bored. If you can't do it well, don't do it. He was stunned for a moment, looking at me in disbelievably, shaking his fingers and being speechless. I opened my eyes again and looked at his eyes that had not yet recovered meaningfully. I have a question for your highness. If the queen finds out that Qianghua is her own flesh and blood, what should your highness do with Princess Chaoyang? His eyes moved, as if he hadn't turned back from his emotions. I stepped forward and came close to his ear. Is your highness going to marry her? He trembled all over and pushed me away, as if he was looking at some monster. Soon, I didn't know what came to my mind and shook my head desperately, as if something that subverted cognition was drilling into my brain. I pretended to have no intention inside. Poor princess, I'm afraid the serious crime of confusing the royal blood will die. If you want to live, I'm afraid you have to find another way out. 7. Back to the prime minister's house, the third sister had been banned. Before I could ask the question, the maid at the door took the lead and flatteringly and smiled. I heard that the third girl was kidnapped by the robbers, but she dared to openly plant a lute to the eldest lady in front of the princess. The master was so angry and lost his temper. I raised my eyebrows. Dad is indeed a person who knows current affairs. His love for his children is not fake, but he is also not ambiguous about the future of the Yang family. As soon as the third sister was sent back, he already knew the ins and outs and made the right choice. After all, I, the future crown princess, still have some weight in his eyes. It's just that it's destined to disappoint him. Instead of going to the study to find him, I went to see the third sister. She knelt on the ground. Princess's goodwill 9 times 10 to the power of 121. I held my chin and looked at it for a long time. The third sister was born well, and used to be weak. I think the prince also likes this. When she saw me, her face surged with resentment. The eldest sister is usually good, but it turns out to be pretending? I didn't care about it. I threw the square handkerchief lazily, and threw it in front of her. She picked it up suspiciously, and was shocked in an instant. Why is it with you? I looked down at her with pity. Do you know where you found this? On a beggar. She was stunned and stared in disbelief. It's impossible. I sneered. What's impossible? Is it possible that the prince still wants to take your things close to you? She looked sluggish and muttered. How could it be like this? I bent down, pinched her chin, and said coldly. Do you think the deal with the princess can be hidden from anyone? What did she promise you? Let the prince accept you as a concubine? That's why you don't hesitate to betray me and make me lose my reputation. Is that so? She struggled to step back and looked at me in horror. How do you know? I didn't do anything. I hooked my lips and smiled. It doesn't matter how I know, but if the third sister wants to enter the East Palace so much, I can show you a clear way. 8. In less 2 days, the result of the queen's recognition of the daughter came out. At the flower viewing banquet, there were almost all the noble women in the capital. There should always be an explanation for this big event. Qianghua was awarded the title of Princess Lanyue. At the same time, it was also rumored that the prince was going to withdraw from Yangfu and marry Princess Chaoyang. Now the whole capital is boiling. I heard that the prince knelt outside the Gongquan hall, did not eat or drink, and forced each other with his life. He wanted the empress to succeed, and Princess Chaoyang knelt beside him, and burst into tears. It's like a bitter mandarin duck who has been wronged. Hearing that the emperor was so angry that he didn't go up early in the morning, the queen was sick. When I heard the news, I couldn't help but raise the corners of my mouth. It seems that His Highness the Crown Prince really has a deep affection for the princess. Liang Yu has been a princess for so many years without blood and family affection. How could she die? It's just that the prince cares about it. Of course, it is not that he doesn't know, but that he has found his heart, and wants to obey his heart. It's even simpler for Liang Yu. A fake princess doesn't have the scenery of a crown princess. But whether she can still be the crown prince after marrying her, is not within her scope of consideration. My father is also very angry. He dropped several sets of tea bowls. After being the crown prince for so long, he still can't hold it clearly. He was angry, but he still wanted to do it for him. And he didn't want to withdraw from me. He is a royalist. Even if today's son favors the third prince more, he still belongs to the prince. Of course, this idea is based on the condition that I can be the crown princess. It doesn't matter if I don't say anything. He will always change his mind. The girl handed over a letter with no signature and no content. I was clear, and the letter was burning. I said faintly in the smoke, "Go to the Spring Breeze building." In the private room of Chunfeng building, the third prince Liang Yuan has been waiting for a long time. When he entered the door, he was playing with the tea boardly. Seeing me, he raised his eyelids and said, "I have received Miss Yang's sincerity." I sat down opposite him. "I wonder if your highness is still satisfied." He smiled and shrugged his shoulders indifferently. Satisfied is satisfactory, but this affair is not enough to make the prince fall. It's true. At least my father has never died. I poured a cup of tea for myself. "Don't worry, this is the beginning." He nodded. "Yes, once the opening is opened, there will be a lot of room for operation. I just don't know." He suddenly raised his eyebrows, closed his smiling face, and asked me solemnly, "Miss Young gave me such a big gift. What do you want?" I paused slightly, restrained my expression, and said with a straight look, "What if I say, I want to be the queen?" He was stunned and suddenly laughed. "Why do you want to be the queen? Why are you so complicated? Just marry the prince and wait for him to ascend to the throne." I waited for him to finish laughing before continuing to say, "I want to be the queen, but I don't want him to be the emperor. There are only 2 adult princes left. Except for him, you are the only one left. I have no choice." He curled his lips and said, "So I'm the choice that the girl didn't choose. It's so sad. However, I am a person. Although I don't have much ambition, I am still very cautious about marrying a daughter-in-law. Let me think about it carefully. It doesn't matter." I stood up and prepared to say goodbye. "Your Highness, think slowly, there is time." When I went out, Chocho asked me, "Miss, will he agree?" I looked at the crowd flowing along the street and nodded. "Yes, he will agree. He will soon find out that this is not the first time we met. And he will find out that we have a long history." The memory of the third prince in my previous life was very vague. The only thing that impressed me was that he sat in front of my grave all night after my death. The next day he brought a lunch box with meat, vegetables and snacks. At that time, I didn't understand why. I found on it later. I heard that when the noble concubine was demoted, she lived in Guangye Temple with her young third prince for a period of time. And I happened to live in Zhuangzi at that time, which was on the edge of Guangye Temple. What's more, I heard someone shouting hungry through the wall of Guangye Temple. So I gave him my food from the dog hole. In that box, there are meat and vegetables with a little heart. Every day after that, I will bring in more meal and give it to the little monk who shouted hungry. It was originally a kind heart in childhood, but I didn't expect it to be a mistake. In his previous life, he found that I was the one who gave the meal after my death, so he regretfully went to the grave to mourn. But in this life, it's time for him to pay off his debt. 9. 3 days later, the news came from the palace that the saint agreed to the prince's request. Princess Chaoyang abolished the title of princess and married the crown prince as the crown prince's concubine. At the same time, the third lady in our house, Prince Liangdi, was also married. On the day of the edict, my father was very disappointed. According to insiders, it turned out that something ugly happened in the palace. The imprisoned princess somehow stayed with the fainted prince in untidy clothes. And there was also a girl, Miss Yang-san, who was also naked. You can imagine the chaos at the scene. Even though the royal family blocked the news, it still spread sporadically. I shook my head secretly. Liang Yuan was worthy of being a fluffy prince, and the method he came up with was also simple and rough. The third sister clenched her lower lip and looked around nervously, as if she wanted to explain something, but no one paid attention to her. My father looked at her coldly and turned away. "Don't do it yourself." Thinking about it, he probably knew it in his heart, and the prince was afraid that the road ahead would be difficult. The third prince agreed to my request. He rushed into the Spring Breeze building in a hurry, looked at me up and down and smiled. "So it's you, little dumb?" Outside the temple, I rarely speak because of my throat injury. The little monk inside also kept calling me dumb sister. I also pretended to be surprised. It turned out that the little monk of Guangye Temple turned out to be your highness. It's not only to be paid, but it can't be too much of the market and fall into the bottom. Always let him discover it by himself, and take the initiative to propose it in surprise. He came to me with a smile, and his enlarged handsome face was flawless. "The position of the queen. I will respond to you, little dumb. I will repay you for the grace of a meal with my whole life." 10. When the third prince proposed to marry me, Dad agreed without hesitation. I don't know what Liang Yuan said. He smiled proudly with his beard and his face wrinkled. He talked happily. Originally, he didn't like the third prince very much, but now he seems to have appreciated it for a long time. After the news came out, the prince came to me. His face was much more haggard, and his voice was low and unhappy. Why do you want to marry the third brother? He is a famous promising prince and a bunch of confidants. I took a step back and said, the prince joked that his highness is excellent in my eyes. His eyes were red, unwilling and puzzled. How is he? Young Wanqing, I think you really can't get married. No one dares to want it. I said coldly. How can I not bother the prince? Your highness, you'd better take care of your inner house. He was stunned, and his cheeks flushed uncomfortably, and he became angry. It's very good to sit alone and enjoy the blessings of others. I sneered. Whether it's good or not, only I know. After hearing about the prince's wedding, the East Palace was full of chickens and dogs. The innocent Princess Choyang couldn't be naive to the third sister who was slying. At least I have seen her aggressive and ugly appearance several times by the prince. The prince is a pity. The third sister is beautiful. And naturally she also shares a lot of rain and dew. On one side is the old love, on the other side is the new love. His Highness the Crown Prince has a headache. Only then did he think of me. Some people are always cheap bones. When they hold them in their hands, they throw them away. They really fly away and miss them. Perhaps, what he cares about is the position of the prince, and whether it can continue to belong to him. The one who can be the crown prince is not a fool after all. Maybe he also recalls that the Yang family no longer stands on his side with him and resentful. After the third sister returned to Yang's house, she quietly entered my yard. I was flipping through the book, watching her look carefully and waved to her. Sit down. She was still a little afraid of me. After hesitating for a while, she said slowly, I found out what my sister asked me to check. It's concubine Rong. I closed my eyes and opened them quickly. It's really her. When my soul wandered in my previous life, I found something wrong. How could Liang Yu inexplicably get into the eyes of the queen and be recognized as a daughter? Where is such a coincidence in the world? If it's man-made, it makes Soj. This Rongfei is really profound. She played the chess of Princess Chaoyang so early. It's just that the second prince under concubine Rong's Ni died of illness a few years ago. Unfortunately, she was scheming. At first, I didn't understand why Liang Yu, the royal princess, always liked to do some little women's behavior. It turned out that it was because she had known for a long time that she was a fake princess, or a pawn in the hands of others, and she was insecure. Big sister. The third sister called me and pursed her lips. My sister let me into the East Palace, and I also checked what my sister asked me to investigate. I don't know if my sister's promise that day still counts. After coming back from the flower banquet, I gave her two choices. Either go to the temple to be a sister-in-law, or do things for me. Send her away after the work, change her face and marry another good person. Since you dare to calculate, you have to pay the price, don't you? She chose the latter without hesitation. I covered the back of her hand with one hand, and gave her a calming pill. Natural. The third prince's holy family is getting stronger and stronger. I'm afraid that the prince will be in a hurry. The third sister might as well comfort one or two. I held the back of her hand, and her black eyes were full of deep meaning. After she left, I took the letter, wrote a few words briefly, and handed it to Qiu Shui. Send it to your highness. Concubine Rong arranged a good chess, but the master of the chessboard should also be changed. I think Liang Yuan should understand what I mean. Recently, he changed his previous stingy image, and obediently became his filial prince. Every day, he either shows filial piety in front of the emperor or flatters in front of the noble concubine. He even went to see the queen who was sick several times. The emperor was more and more satisfied with him, because he was filial and well-behaved, and did not get mixed with party disputes. In contrast, the prince, who was addicted to the back house all day long, was inferior. It's just that I know that the recent prince is really not tired of the backyard. 11 On March 3rd, the news that the prince forced the palace to rebel spread throughout the court and the field. At that time, the saint was taking medicine when he heard a mouthful of blood medicine sprayed out, and the blue veins all over his forehead, as if he was extremely angry. Rebellious son, I'm not dead yet. The prince proudly threw away the medicine in his hand. Father, why don't you abdicate when you are so old? You actually want to abolish the position of the lonely prince, and let the third brother replace him. I can't wait, and I don't want to wait. Your throne, I want it now. The emperor trembled with anger. Arrogant, I never wanted to destroy you. I didn't want to touch you when you did such a rebellious thing as marrying your sister. How dare you plot against me? The prince was stunned and quickly smiled sarcastically. What does my father pretend to be? I don't know who you like in your heart. Those ministers tried their best to please the third brother when they saw the wind. When the third prince talked to me about this, he described it vividly. I felt a little funny. It seems that the pillow of the third sister and the crown princess blows well. The emperor really didn't want to touch the prince. In his eyes, although the son was not pleasing, he didn't want him to die. Since ancient times, there has been no way to live for the deposed princes. Your Highness, and I thought about it for a long time. Only this way to rebel can make the saint completely give up his heart to the prince. Liang Yuan raised his eyebrows and said, leading is a good thing. When Liang Yu knew that the master was replaced by me, people were going crazy. She cried so hard that she desperately begged me for the antidote. I squinted at him and joked, did you give it to me? The lead is the poison used by concubine Rong to control Princess Chaoyang. He said righteously, of course I didn't give it. How can I make my own opinion without the third prince's concubine? I shook my head and laughed. The prince's rebellion failed in the end. At the critical moment, the third prince appeared with his troops and restrained her. He didn't know where he had lost until the moment he was caught. The emperor seemed to be 10 years old overnight, with gray hair. After hearing the news of the prince's rebellion, the queen was discouraged and wanted to cut off her wrist to kill herself. Xianghua, who had been taking care of her, found her and saved her life. It's just that it's still an intractable disease, and it's lingering. 12 The prince was imprisoned in the heavenly prison. I'm going to see him for the last time. Liang Yu rushed over first, held the railing of the prison door with an eager face, and shouted at me in a panic. Where is the third highness? He said that as long as the prince plots to rebel, he would give me the antidote. Yang Wanqing, give me the antidote quickly. She was so anxious that she didn't notice that the prince behind her stared at her disbelievingly. Before I answered, her hair was pulled back from behind, and then she was slapped hard on the face. Bitch, it turned out that you did it to me. The prince's eyes were about to burst, and he couldn't wait to swallow it alive. After slapping several times in a row, he still couldn't be relieved, which made Liang Yu beg for mercy repeatedly. Prince brother, spare my life. Prince brother, please let me go. It's not like that. After fanning, he seemed to remember something, and rushed to the prison door and stretched out his hand to pull me. Wanqing, help me, I don't want to die. I regret it. I really regret it. I shouldn't have believed this bitch's words, and I shouldn't have withdrawn from you. I took a step back in disgust. Your Highness, today I'm here to see you off for the last time, which is also the fate of the past. I stared at him. Just like in my previous life, he smiled contemptuously in front of my grave. If you die, you will die, so don't make trouble to others. Without waiting for him to respond, I turned around and left. The nightmare that haunts my life is about to get rid of it. The emperor probably doesn't want him to die, but I know that the third highness's nature will not leave him a way to live. Sure enough, not long after, I heard the news that the prince killed the crown princess and committed suicide in the prison. The emperor's bad body is even worse. The ministers asked for the third prince to be appointed as the crown prince. The holy general called the third prince to his side and wrote the edict himself. It's not the crown prince but the new king, or he realizes that his life is not long, or he still has old feelings for the former prince. The former prince was buried as the prince until his death. On the third day of May 13th, the emperor passed away. In the same month, the third prince, Liang Yuan, succeeded to the unification and was awarded the title of Anha. The next month, Emperor Anha married the eldest daughter of the Yang family. Xianghua came to see me and hung her head for a long time without saying a word. I know she is grateful to me, but she is also afraid of me. I understood what she meant inside. Do you want me to let the Empress Dowager go? I became the queen, and her mother naturally became the Empress Dowager. She seemed a little shy and nodded. I know you don't like the queen mother, but she is my mother after all. Besides, she has been sick for a long time, so she won't disturb you. Although I saved her, I also took advantage of her. After a long time, I replied with the word good. The Empress Dowager has begun to recognize people, and I don't need to argue with a demented person. I let my third sister go. As she wished, I arranged for her to be the daughter of a rich businessman. She will marry another rich businessman, so that she can live a rich life. As long as she doesn't be a demon, she will never know that she is surrounded by my people. The wind gradually blew, and I looked out of the window alone. Liang Yuan came to me and gently put on my coat. It's windy, go back. I smiled back and said good. He took my hand and walked in step by step. This is the man I will hold for the rest of my life. We have had warmth and suspicion. In the future, there may be distances and even more storms. But I am his queen. I think I can always live the life I want well.